Marvelous hello, friends and loved ones, and welcome to me trying to do something a little different today. I'm actually going to be looking at a Persona 5 fan game. And just as a friendly heads up, this video will contain spoilers for both Persona 5 and Royal. I honestly have a lot of love and appreciation for fan games. Whether I'm diving into a Pokemon ROM hack that grabs my attention, or I'm exploring the entire steamed hams bit from The Simpsons as a fully playable point-and-click adventure title. However, certain fandoms tend to have more fan games than others. Like, for example, Sonic the Hedgehog fans are never starved for content. But Persona fans... well, we have a Sonic the Hedgehog Persona game that's actually pretty good. My point is that every now and then I like to go out on the hunt for Megami Tensei fan games, and sometimes I'm lucky enough to find one that catches my eye. And the game I'm talking about today is an alternate universe visual novel experience called Synthesis. Synthesis was created by Spectre Thief, who did the art and wrote the story. The entire game was created for a fanzine called Antithesis, so people who bought the magazine had early access to the title, but for other people, the game was officially released at the start of July 2022. Antithesis focused on art, stories, comics, and other projects that centered on the idea of Persona 5 alternate universes where Joker and Akechi swapped roles. So, unsurprisingly, that's what Synthesis is. A short visual novel experience where Akechi takes on the role of the leader of the Phantom Thieves, and Ren is the suave, charismatic detective prince. Which actually brings me to something that I think is really cool in this game. As soon as you boot up the title, you can go into the settings and actually choose if you want the game to call Joker Ren Amamiya or Akira Kurisu. Of course, I went with Ren Amamiya because I like to not be wrong whenever I can help it, but I definitely appreciated that the option was there. Synthesis presumably begins around September or October, and focuses on the Okumura arc of the story. Naturally, this is an alternate universe, so a few things are going to be different. Things open up in late-night Kichijoji, where Akechi gets off work at Jazzjin and runs into Ren, who has a rather stylish Naoto-esque hat. Or at least I thought it was a good look for him, but Akechi seems to disagree, originally referring to it as a ridiculous hat, and later upgrading it to a stupid hat. So you may be wondering what the actual point of this game is. At its core, I'd say this is a game about exploring the relationship between Akechi and Ren, as it's one of the most fundamental parts of the story and is prevalent in many of the scenes. However, despite the argument that it is technically this, I would struggle to call Synthesis a dating sim. But I mean, come on, who hasn't thought about dating Ren? If you've played Persona 5 Dancing in Starlight, you've probably thought about it. And if you've read Memento's Mission, you've definitely thought about it. I mean, I've thought about it. My point is that while, yes, there is a strong element of romantic tension between Akechi and Ren in this game, it's certainly not all there is to the title. There are plenty of great scenes where Akechi interacts with other members of the Phantom Thieves in a way that almost always feels organic and enjoyable. For example, there's a scene where Akechi and Futaba hang out together and watch Featherman DVDs, and even wind up having an awkward but surprisingly heartfelt discussion with Sojiro the next day. There's a strong moment where Akechi and An go to comfort Haru after the death of her father. And there's even a really good bro side and God of the Broshin moment between Akechi and Ryuji, where they make up and bare their feelings, since Akechi and Ren's relationship has put something of a rift between Akechi and Ryuji. Nearly every member of the Phantom Thieves gets at least one good scene to interact with this alternate universe version of Goro, and it provides a nice level of context and world building to showcase where they stand with one another. And Synthesis does a really good job with its premise by reminding us that this isn't just Ren, but he's called Akechi now, and that Goro is still the blunt, occasionally crass version of himself that may have a relationship with these characters that greatly differs from what you'd see from Ren interacting with them. Also, I say nearly every member because we really don't get to see a lot of Yusuke in this game. Sorry, Fox fans. Throughout these more down-to-earth personal scenes, we are treated to a few distinct moments that remind us this is still a Persona 5 story. The gang infiltrates Okumura's palace, has discussions in safe rooms planning out their next move, sends the calling card, defeats his shadow, and ultimately deals with the aftermath of his inevitable and aforementioned death. But like I said before, the main draw of Synthesis mostly focuses on exploring the bond, or dare I say confidant, between Akechi and Ren. Whether these characters are heading to a trendy crepe shop to satisfy their sweet tooth, or having a much more serious heart-to-heart about the concept of the Phantom Thief's personal justice in the jazz club, it's a slower, more subtle build-up that doesn't jam-pack every possible scene with over-the-top writing that these two guys are just being thirsty for one another. The overall climax of Synthesis involves Akechi meeting up with Ren and trying to put together the pieces of who the Black Mask behind Okumura's death was. Depending on what choices you make in this scene, there are 3 possible endings that you can get on your first playthrough. In the nicest possible way, I'd say all 3 of these are different variations on a bad ending, where Akechi winds up making a decision that does feel relatively in character, but ultimately it creates a scenario that these characters can't come back from. My personal favorite is the one where the two realize they share a common enemy and basically form their own team, with blackjack and hookers. Fortunately, 2 of these 3 endings actually unlock New Game Plus mode, which I'll admit lends credence to this being a Mega 10 fan game at its core. New Game Plus isn't all that different story-wise, but it does have one noticeable change. See, throughout your first playthrough, there are certain dialogue options when talking to Ren that you could try to pick, but Akechi would say that he doesn't have the guts or kindness required to say such a thing. Again, this is a simple but appreciated nod to the actual mechanics of the newer Persona games. Naturally though, you're able to pick these options on New Game Plus, which can allow you to activate the game's true ending. A quick minor warning to anyone who wants to do this, Spectre Thief informed me of a bug where if you save and quit the game during a New Game Plus run, it will deactivate those true ending flags, so make sure you do your entire true ending run in a single playthrough. Not that this is difficult to do, as Synthesis is only about 2 hours long. It's an enjoyable little experience for Persona 5 fans, and I can recommend it to anyone, unless you're one of those people who gets irrationally angry at shipping Joker and Crow together, and if you are, I'm kinda impressed you're still watching this video, to be honest. Before I wrap things up, I'd like to go over a few of my personal pros and cons with this title. To start with the positives, the artwork is fantastic. Spectre Thief did a great job capturing that Persona 5 aesthetic, and the visual novel portraits of all the characters look great. I thought it was a really nice touch that Goro actually has multiple costumes in his portraits depending on where he is or what he's doing. Speaking of portraits, I also really like that whenever you're not in the metaverse, Morgana actually has his portrait depict him as the more realistic cat. I always thought it was super weird that Persona 5 didn't do that until basically the end of the game. On the subject of the art and entering the metaverse, one of my favorite things in Synthesis is that both Akechi and Ren have brand new Phantom Thief designs that do an amazing job of incorporating the role swap theme, but in a way that still makes sense that their codenames would be Crow and Joker respectively. While unfortunately you never get to see any full body art of Crow's new design, Spectre Thief did make some concept art for the two that helps give us a better idea of what it looks like. A minor complaint I have with the story is, like I said, Synthesis starts out by throwing you into the middle of the Okumura arc, so it often feels like there's a bit of missing context regarding how this alternate universe got to this point. I'm not saying that I expected or even wanted the game to show us the 5 or 6 months that led up to this point in their entirety, but I would have been okay with the game going over a couple of things. Like how Akechi wound up at Sojiro's, how they first met Ren, or how this version of the Detective Prince got onto the team in the first place, since he's joining during the Okumura arc instead of at the school festival before heading into Sai's palace, and presumably there was no pancake slip-up this time around. There are a few lines of dialogue here and there that kinda fill in some of the blanks, but I think a short recap intro, or even some well-placed flashbacks or dream sequences between days would not have been unwelcome. Another minor nitpick is that while earlier I complimented Synthesis for showing us distinct Phantom Thief designs for Crow and Joker, at no point in the game do we ever get to see Ren's Black Mask self after it's revealed that he's the traitor. It doesn't really detract from anything, but I will admit I would have liked to have seen it. Lastly, and I'll fully admit this is 100% a me thing, I would have really liked to have seen some personas in this Persona game. The quickest and easiest way to get me invested in your Persona project is to promise me some new or distinct Persona designs. It's why I love Scruffy Turtles, Adult Confidant Alternate Universe, it's why I'm hyped as heck for the Golden Girls Persona fan game, and it's why I've enjoyed putting together my own Persona death game story called Persona Behind the Mask. And you should all go check that out, by the way. Wink wink, nudge nudge. I actually did reach out to Spectre Thief to ask about these alternate versions Personas, and they informed me that Crow would have had a unique redesign of Robin Hood, while Joker would have had two distinct personas like Akechi from the main game, notably the Count of Monte Cristo and Mephistopheles. It's cool to know that these ideas exist in concept, but I definitely would have felt better if we'd gotten a chance to see them in the game. Overall, though, Synthesis is a nice little time, and I realize that most of my complaints boil down to me basically wanting to see more, and that's not always a bad thing. I was invested enough in this alternate universe take on Persona 5 to want to learn more about it and see more of what it could potentially offer. I almost feel like Spectre Thief could expand upon the story a little more, add some additional scenes, art, personas, what have you, and basically re-release the title as a sort of Synthesis Royal that I would gladly support and play through again. Speaking of Royal, Synthesis does acknowledge Maruki, but we don't get to see Yoshizawa at all. It would have been neat to see her relationship with these different takes on Akechi and Ren as well. Alright, but I think I'm gonna wrap things up here. What do you all think about Synthesis? Does it look like it's up your alley? If you've already played it, how did you feel about it? If anybody wants to check out the title for themselves, I've included a link to where you can download it in the description below. I definitely had fun talking about this one, so feel free to let me know in the comments if you know of any other Megaton fan games that I should check out. Who knows, maybe I'll do videos on them one day. And now, if you'll all excuse me, I have a sudden craving for crepes. Hey everyone, thanks for watching my video. If you liked it, be sure to click like, but if you really liked it, don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss out on any future videos. Extra special thanks to all my friends and loved ones over on Patreon, which you can pledge to today to see your own name in these ending credits. Thanks again for watching, and until next time, take care.